So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell if it's a Dapper? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I don't know research on that.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dapper Reacts. This is Dapper Reacts number 135. The Bible isn't a history book. So we're going to explain that title in a little bit, but I do actually have a couple things. First of all, we have Ben, Do I Look Like a Fungus Thick Tunicate, who has sent 5 Dapper Dinosaur membership, so thank you very much. Let's take 5 drinks for that. I am currently drinking, I don't even know what this is, but I'm going to see if I like it first. Yeah, this is fine, yeah. Yeah, basically I made it dark and stormy, but then I topped it off with some pineapple juice. It's pretty decent. So there's 5. Vish is here. She's quiet today.
For today.
And I just left her on mute, and Kip too. So that's another drink for Dapper's Professional, as well as I didn't have the opening video ready to go. So there's 2 drinks for Dapper's Professional because I suck today.
Wow.
It's okay. It happens. All right. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what is mentioned in the pinned chat. Yes, I am aware that Charlie Kirk was killed a few days ago. No, you do not have to tell me about it. No, you do not have to feel bad about not mourning for a dead fascist. Also, yes, Frank Turek was there. No, there is no reason to think he was giving hand signals to the shooter, which is a current conspiracy theory, is that Frank Turek was under the employ of the current regime to send hand signals to a shooter to kill Charlie Kirk. There is no reason to think any of that is true. It is hilarious.
Yes. It's funny. We can all agree. This is funny.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And it couldn't happen to a nicer guy than Frank Turek.
So, if you decide to chat about that, I am asking my mods to put you in a timeout. Do not ban people for this. This is a timeout kind of thing, not a ban. Also, if you super chat about it, or membership chat, I will acknowledge the amount or the time and level of membership, depending on if it's a super chat or membership chat. I will acknowledge who sent it, but I will not be reading it. And the reason for that is because I am not going to let a dead fascist take over my channel any more than it already has, which was only a little bit, and only, on, what was it, Wednesday? Was that?
Yeah,
Wednesday. Yeah.
It was Wednesday.
Yeah.
Right, in real time, right? While
exactly.
all this stuff was going on.
Which, I get it. So, I am not angry if you have that still on your mind. I get it. It's a big event. It was pretty... It was pretty horrifying to watch if you watch the footage. I don't recommend it. So I get all of that. I get why you might want to talk about it. But that's not why we're here, and that's why I'm giving this particular talk right now. Then we're going to transition into what we're actually here for. So there you go, mods. If it comes up, find people out. Do not ban them. And there you go. For $5, Ben, Do I Look Like a Fungus Thick Tunicate? Oh, sorry, for £5. Says, Canadian volcanoes are as real as Dapper's love for pelagic tunicates.
That's 100% true.
They are actually much, much more real than that, because I have no love for pelagic tunicates.
So after...
The dinosaur doth protest too much.
No, it's...
After participating in that stream on Wednesday, and by the way, I was so goddamn tired when we started, and it didn't get any better when I went to Acadian class later that afternoon and kept dozing off because Dr. Josh can have that effect on people. But
burn
it after that stream, I was like, I really want to go to the Niska excuse me, the Niska Memorial Lava Bed Park.
Yeah.
But it's a 15-hour drive away from me.
To make it like a weekend deal,
Wow, 15 hours. Like that would be That would be quite the weekend. It would have to
Yeah.
be a very long.
Yeah, you would pick a long
weekend,
weekend,
but
right? You'd pick one where like the
it,
Friday or the Monday is
yeah.
off.
But yeah, that's like legitimately super goddamn cool.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is why is the title so weird, right? So on the thumbnail it says the Bible isn't a history book, but in the actual video title that you can like actually like search for, it says the Bible is open parentheses and apostrophe T close parentheses a history book question mark. That is because actually Kip and I disagree on this, and so my position is that everything in the Bible was written before what we now think of as history had even been invented. And that if you were to compare anything to do with historiography, which is what the Bible could be if it's doing history, it does not follow any of the actual practices that have been established for historiography, which is not to knock it, it's just to say it was done before this was invented, and so it didn't follow any of these conventions. It doesn't cite primary sources. It doesn't have any particular concern for the actual literal historicity of what's being written down, at least not to any large degree that I can find. It isn't grappling with alternate explanations for the facts that it's purporting to show us. It isn't doing any of the things that a historian would recognize as history, apart from just writing down things that are supposed to have happened in the past, which is, I would say, too low of a bar. Now, Kip, of course, not being someone who's a trained historian, is going to be wrong about this, but let's hear him out, though.
Oh, yes, right, of course. So, no, in my opinion, the Bible, in broad strokes, there's literature within the Bible that approximates the project and the goals and some of the methods of historiography without emulating or repeating all of them, and was part of I would say a long stretching, a long moving a long lasting literary movement towards what eventually became historiography.
There's Mothra, for Mothra.
So yeah, okay. Like so while I would agree with everything that Dapper points out about what proper historiography is, how it's defined, the strictures under which we have established what this discipline is for very important reasons of ensuring that we have some good sense of what the past actually looked like and how to most responsibly reconstruct it. I tip my hat to those who have gone before and laid groundwork in getting us from point A to point B.
And see, to me, that just seems like saying, "Oh, medieval alchemists were doing chemistry." They weren't. They were doing something like chemistry, and it led to chemistry, but it's not chemistry.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. I guess that's, and I think, and so here's part of it, right? Because in my video, in the stuff that I'm writing, I've written a little bit about this academically in the past, in terms of evaluating apocalyptic literature, which is reflective of this apocalyptic worldview, which becomes pretty obsessed with history. And I would actually argue that this is one of the catalysts for a stronger urgency to establish some criteria for how to actually do history. But within apocalyptic literature, I actually say that the best way to understand these texts are as primitive attempts at writing history, even though they're long before. So I think that's where a lot of it comes from. I think when you understand apocalyptic literature from a stronger historical perspective, then you gain a stronger insight into what's actually going on. It helps you to get apocalyptic literature.
I see. That's the thing. I don't necessarily disagree. I just don't think that means that it meets the definition for history.
That's fine.
Okay.
And I mean, I think if we're being technically correct here, then I 100% agree with you.
Well, then in that case, since technically correct is the best kind of correct, as we all know,
As we all know.
then yeah, Kip and I once again agree. Also, I
Happens.
have
on
been
occasion.
struggling with YouTube for a
I
little while
don't-
now to
I
get.
don't mark these times on the calendar, but it happens.
Yes. I have been struggling with YouTube for a little while to get the super chat goal to actually accept. For a while, it was just saying, oh, there was an error, or it was just hanging on the button after clicking and nothing was happening. It is now active. It is, in fact, to get Kip Unleashed. And I will also be taking the Ben Thick Tunicate £5 super chat as the first one. So we only need to get that thing to 29 in order for Kip to be unleashed, because YouTube just wasn't letting me activate the goal, which is annoying and dumb and their fault, not mine. So,
Yes, Kent, Jeffrey, Arimathea, Halstead. It is true that the people who were writing about the past back then would just make shit up. That's fair. And
including in the Bible.
It was part of yeah, absolutely everywhere. Is it, by the way, is it just me, or is Dapper's audio cutting out?
Oh,
in and
is
out?
it?
For me as well.
Yeah.
Might be your gate time or something.
I might not be able to fix that right now, but I will look into it. It's
Sorry, I
looking
should've
good
said something
on
earlier.
Discord. If yeah, you definitely should have. If it is cutting out over on YouTube, which is slightly more important, then please do let me know. But we're here mostly to take a look at Dr. Brian Thomas from the Institute for Creation Research. Right, that's who these guys are. This isn't Answers in Genesis. Hold on, I had to think about it. It's because their logo isn't on the table anymore. The old table was less interesting, but it had the logo facing the camera, which was nice. This one, they need to right. They need to add a logo
what you're doing.
in the middle section there. Just the little ICR logo with the weird DNA that they used to replace their atom. Seems okay on YouTube.
It actually feels it's better now. I don't know if you did anything.
It was probably a connection problem then to Discord.
Okay.
So he has just finished telling us that there was a Stele, I don't know how to pronounce that word. I can't remember.
Stele.
That's why have two E's in there and then pronounce them both differently?
Yeah,
Stele.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But phonetic alphabet just never really did catch on, did it?
I mean, no, not really, and it's a little disappointing.
Yeah.
Oh well. So yeah. There is a Stele, sorry. I hate this word. Which probably mentions the House of David. Probably. It might actually not, but if it does, then that is some confirmatory evidence that a guy named David started a kingdom, or was the foundational figure of a kingdom, and possibly the founder of a dynasty. Which does corroborate the idea of a King David, although it doesn't actually give any evidence for any of the stories about David, including any of the stories about Saul, or any of the stories about hiding in caves, or rebellions, or taking temple bread after lying about what you've been up to, or, playing the harp, or any of these things, right? All of that, not confirmed by this. It's just a name. It's like if you found an inscription about a king named Arthur in England, that just confirms that there was probably some guy who was calling himself a king who was named Arthur. It doesn't indicate anything about, like, Sir Galahad, or quests for the Holy Grail, or courtly intrigue and love triangles, or any of that stuff.
But they're great stories, though.
They are great stories, and I do not in any way begrudge people telling them. However, what I do object to is people saying that because we found an inscription with a name from a story, therefore the story is true. That is a non sequitur. That does not follow.
By the way, I just had kind of a thought here, Dapper, that you might want to consider. Perhaps could your frustration with the pronunciation of a word like stele have to do with the fact? Now, this is something I picked up from a certain now disgraced Egyptologist,
right?
Who says that he often gets word pronunciations just totally muddled. They jumble around in that gigantic melon of his, because it's the 14 or 15 languages that he knows. That when you know that many languages, it's hard to keep all the sounds straight, and they all just get jumbled around in your gigantic brain. Could that be the problem?
I very much doubt it. The closest I've ever had to that problem is every once in a while I have a tendency to use the Arabic name for a letter rather than the Hebrew name for a letter when speaking about Hebrew. But
Certainly, yes.
I don't think that's the same thing. Like, I've been known to call meme, because that's what it is in Arabic. But that's about as far as it goes. So, yeah, I don't think that that's much of a thing. Although I will say that sometimes I do start reading a text, and I'll start reading it as if it's one language, and then realize that, oh, no, it's a different language, and I have to, like, change gears in my brain.
Yes.
It actually is like changing gears, right? Like, you have to stop, your brain shifts mode, and then suddenly you're like, oh, okay, now it's starting to make sense, right? Like, if I'm reading something and, like, I'm seeing Italian, but for some reason my brain has been like, all right, time to read French. And then I'm reading, I'm like, what's happening? And I'm like, oh, right, this isn't French, this is Italian. I need to shift my my gears into trying to read Italian.
This is why every language should have its own independent script.
No, that's dumb.
No!
That's at least as dumb as English using the Latin alphabet. I would say that at a certain level of language family is where the individual script should go. For instance, I don't think that Romance languages and Germanic languages should share the same script, but the Germanic languages and the Romance languages probably should.
You're starting to cut out a little bit again. And also, Maltese has entered the chat.
Yeah, also Maltese should not be using the Latin alphabet. That's even worse than English using the Latin alphabet. It's at least as bad as Yiddish using the Hebrew alphabet.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, but Yiddish should not be using the Hebrew alphabet. It's totally unsuited for a Germanic language. So,
At least it has gutturals.
So does German. It should be using a Germanic alphabet developed by Germanic-speaking people, which there is one of. They just stopped using it. So, oops. In other words, everyone who speaks Yiddish, what I'm telling you is that you would be better off learning runes and using runes to write Yiddish. I know you're not going to, and I'm not going to actually try to make you do it, but trust me, it would be better.
Runes are also cool.
They are indeed.
Just use Cyrillic.
Yeah, seriously, Polish. Yeah. Oh, well. All right, so I'm going to hit play, and now that you have the context for what Brian Thomas here was talking about, and remember, Brian Thomas, not a historian, not an archaeologist, not a biblical scholar. He is a paleobiochemist. So, in other words, he probably knows less about this than I do.
So,
Wow.
but you have to approach it openly. You have to have it in as a possibility in your mind. Maybe this book is right.
I don't know that any archaeologists aren't holding open that possibility that maybe the stories are true.
Maybe this book is right. See, this is the thing that pisses me off about people like this. And this is just within Christian apologetics generally, I think, is everything tends to be evaluated on whether or not on whether or not it supports or rejects the Bible, right? As if these are actual categories that historians are ever working with or archaeologists are ever working with. No. The way we do this is we're looking at our subject history. We're looking at the events that unfolded, and we're trying to identify as many pieces of evidence we have for that. And then without going, well, this one's wrong and this other one is right, I'm going, here's my reconstruction.
Right.
On the basis of the collection of these things. The Bible's just a data point.
Mm-hmm.
When
Which
it comes
is
to
taken into account as such. It's not ignored.
Yes. No, not at all. And it's as if, like, this is the thing. These people think that we're because they're projecting, right? Because their goal is always about whether or not the Bible is right. They think my goal as someone more secular, I guess, as someone in the academic field, as if my goal is, I'm just out to show that the Bible is wrong. No.
Yeah. In fact, if I remember what biographical details I have of you correctly, you probably would have been much happier finding that everything in the Bible was in fact historically sound and in terms of like actually demonstrably accurate.
In many respects, yes. And I still take some pretty conservative positions among biblical scholars. For example, I like playing with the idea that a lot of stuff in the succession narrative, these stories of David, you can, reflect stuff that actually happened. That is not a widely held opinion in my field, but for the reasons that it's just in many ways an interesting way of exploring the history.
Oh, and I do want to point out that speaking of that particular topic, when I say that the Tel Dan stele doesn't demonstrate those things are true, that's also not me saying that they're not true. That's me saying we don't have evidence, but it's possible.
But it's also there's no way to connect one to the other because the Tel Dan inscription is not about David.
Right. It just mentions a house of David.
Yes. That's it.
All right, we got a couple super chats here and also a question that I want to answer. So Lieutenant Matt the Moose Broker for $2 says Yiddish inherited its alphabet from pre-Yiddish. Oh, there you go. That explains it. Josh McGee's for $5 says a vote for Runish. And then Pillowpunk asks a question. Okay, Pillowpunk says, okay, serious question though. What is the actual difference between runes and letters? So one thing is runes are letters, right? So it's not like there's a difference. It's sort of like asking what's the difference between ducks and birds. Well, birds are a larger category and ducks are one subset of that. So what makes something a rune is to some extent a little bit arbitrary, and usually it ends up having to do with like basically being derived from a particular Germanic alphabet that was developed before the Roman conquest of Germania by Germanic-speaking peoples, but clearly under the influence of the Latin alphabet, because many of the letter shapes are obviously based on the letters of the Latin alphabet that code for roughly the same sound. That being said, if you're using it in a generic way, like trying to classify Tolkien's Dwarvish alphabet as runes, what usually ends up being meant is that it's an angular script that is broadly alphabetic and is used to inscribe onto wood or stone with a chisel, which is why it tends to have straight lines, because curved lines are harder to make with a chisel. And so that is generally what is meant by a rune if you're using it in the generic sense of like, any old script that meets these criteria could be called a runic script. So yeah, in the historical sense, there's a small category of runic alphabets, but in the wider sense, you're looking for angular scripts, and usually there's no horizontal lines either. Usually lines either are vertical, or they slope down to the left or down to the right, and there are no horizontal lines. Is another key characteristic that you see in alphabets that are called runic. Which also usually means you can make a sort of a matrix, and all the letters can be drawn on it. So what you do is you have like 3 vertical lines, and then you have 3 diagonal lines that go from one side to the other, down to the right in 3 spots, and then down to the left in 3 spots. And if you look at that, then every one of the runes in both the Elder and the Younger Futhark, which is the most commonly learned and commonly found runic alphabet, can generally be drawn within that little matrix, which is just a little tool for constructing letters. So yeah, that is basically what a runic alphabet is. I don't know. Kip, do you have anything to add, or Vishanti, anything there?
No.
All right.
I don't really care.
You don't care about runes, Vishanti? Are you going to cast
No.
your runes and see the future through the eye of Odin or something? I don't know.
Okay.
Man. And yet you think that you're going to become someone who rules an army of ravens without even knowing how to cast runes.
Oh, you think crows don't speak other languages or understand other scripts? That's cute.
I just think that they're the biggest fans of runes because of all the Germanic myths about Corvids and their connections to runes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and
Yeah.
the cool thing is all these discoveries confirm that and confirm that and confirm that.
Okay, this is something that's just bugging me about the format here.
Confirm.
The other person who, this is the first time I'm seeing her, so I can't remember her name. Also, she doesn't ever do talks on her own, so like I've never responded to her independently of someone else. But what is her point here? Like all she does is every once in a while seem to like read out the next bullet point that they're supposed to go over, but add a question mark at the end of it. You could just not have her. I don't get why she's here. And then every once in a while she's just like, okay, great. Here's the thing.
You and she both don't understand why she's there.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I think, yeah.
So the whole like having someone who's gonna like nod along and like, you know, make every once in a while agreeable noises or something like that, that's important in a conversation. That's called back channeling, and it indicates that the listener is being attentive and is either understanding or not understanding what's being said. And there's a whole thing about like different levels of back channeling and back channeling expectations between languages and whatnot, and why people who are, say, native Japanese speakers back channel too much in English and vice versa, and things like that, right? You can look all into it. But this isn't a conversation primarily, it's a talk by Brian Thomas. Monologues, which is really what's happening, don't need someone to back channel. So she's fulfilling a role that is completely unnecessary for the most part here, which is back channeling to someone who's not actually talking to her. He's talking to us. And it's weird. I don't get it. But that's okay. It's not like wrong or anything like that. It's just weird. Joshua Geese for $5 says, in one of our scripts at work, we added a rune to be printed in the output, so we could be ruining the script. Ah, clever. Clever. Yeah.
Very nice.
All right, here we go.
We have another note here. It says Isaiah 45 mentions King Cyrus of Persia.
Oh, good.
I mean, great. Is there anyone who's trying to argue that Cyrus isn't real or didn't conquer Babylon or anything like that?
I have a feeling that this is not where they're going.
Oh, we're not doing Cyrus the Great, you think?
No, I think we are doing Cyrus the Great, but we're going in a different direction, I think.
Okay, well,
let's
let's find out.
Say that.
You would know more than I would, because when I pay attention to like ICR, I don't generally pay attention to what they have to say about Cyrus the Great, because I normally don't care.
It's in Isaiah 44 as well, and God named him.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm getting ahead. The next one is about prophecies, but God named him 100 years before he was born.
How do you know that?
Well, obviously, Dapper, because it's in the book that Isaiah wrote back in the 8th century.
And how do we know that Isaiah wrote it?
Because his name, I don't know if you knew this, but Isaiah's name in this book that comprises, it's been divided into 66 chapters. It's 29 feet long in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
That is
this
impressive.
Book that's 29 feet long. I don't know if you knew this, but Isaiah's name appears in this book 6 times.
Wow. Okay, counterpoint. There's a 316-page long book called The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket. That's a made-up guy, and I know it's made up because Edgar Allan Poe made him up. But if we took out the title page and then let that book sit around for, say, 600 years, wouldn't that be just as much evidence of the actual existence of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, who flew a hot air balloon to the moon, as the book of Isaiah is of the actual Isaiah's prophecies?
Yeah.
Okay.
So your audience is pretty on the ball. So I'm sure most of you guys know what's going on here, but I'll just spell this out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So for a long time now, for almost 200 years now, biblical scholars have recognized that the book of Isaiah is a composite work that was written and edited over the course of probably a couple hundred years, maybe even a little longer. And largely, the book is divided into 3 parts, very originally named First Isaiah, Second Isaiah, and Third Isaiah. First Isaiah is thought to have potentially been stuff written by Isaiah himself, living in the 8th century, or at least stuff that he said and was collected by people and written down in or shortly after the 8th century. And these prophecies, this literature appears generally between Isaiah chapters 1 and Isaiah chapter 39. Towards the end there, between chapters 35 to 39, it gets a little fuzzy and there's divided opinions on where it ends. But this tends to be like the original core of Isaiah. First Isaiah, these are prophecies about Israel and Judah in the 8th century BCE. So, it seems like whoever wrote this stuff down, likely living in the 8th century and really deeply concerned about things that were happening in the 8th century. But then something happens in Isaiah chapter 40 where all of a sudden from Isaiah chapter 40, 39, 40. Yeah, that's right. Isaiah chapter 40 to Isaiah chapter 55. Now, there doesn't seem to be any interest in the 8th century at all. In fact, the interest dramatically shifts to things going on in the 6th century, close to the beginning of the 6th century, when the people of Judah, this is, after the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians, and large numbers of the people of Judah are living in exile in Babylon. So the writer is talking a lot about how much he misses the land of Israel, the land of Judah, how much he misses the temple, which seems to be like not a thing that is there because he misses it. These sorts of things. And then there's another shift between Isaiah chapter 55 and 56 and through the rest of the book. Now the writer is in the city of Jerusalem, and there's a temple there, and he's looking forward to the day when all the nations of the earth are going to come together at the Jerusalem temple and worship Yahweh. So for a long, long time, scholars have observed this. Now, importantly, those 6 mentions of the name Isaiah, those all belong in the first part, in what's commonly identified as First Isaiah. There's never any mention of Isaiah anywhere else in the book. All the prophecies, all the poems, all the literature from the second part and the third part are all anonymous. They're all, never attributed to anyone in particular. Lots of them are voiced in the plural second person, or sorry, the plural third person, as us, right?
Us is plural first person, Kip.
That's what I said. I said plural
third.
second person first. Oh, shit. Sorry.
Yeah.
I've got too many paradigms rattling around in my head.
Hey,
That's a bad excuse. I'm sorry.
At least you don't have to deal with fourth person, which is a thing that crops up in some languages.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Yeah.
So now, Cyrus appears as a person, a historical figure, as someone, a real guy in Second Isaiah, written around the time, when Cyrus lived and ruled. And it's no mystery why he would be mentioned in this text. And importantly, it's not like the writer's like, in the distant future, there will be a king from Persia who rises up and his name will be Cyrus. No, it just says Cyrus is my messenger, my slave, who's going to do what I want. That's all it says.
Yeah. All right, we have a few super chats here and one membership chat. Sean, the 21st century viewer of this channel, says her role, speaking of the woman whose name I can't remember, sorry, ICR employee lady, you just don't do enough for me to remember your name. Her role is to be an audience surrogate by making I agree sounds. The audience is priced, I think you mean like poised, to just accept what he's saying. In other words, she's the shill with the Godzilla. We'll take a drink for the attempted Godzilla. You're probably on mobile.
Or cutting out big time, bud.
Yeah.
So that is not something I'm going to be able to control. So I'm not cutting out on the
like
YouTube. So I don't know if there's anything else I can do about that. Lieutenant Matt the Moose Broker for $5. We can confirm the existence of a greatly blessed band from Nantucket. Thank you. DM Nims for Now Wing, who's been a member for 37 months and is at the amulet level, says, "Why do you hate the Bible, Kip, with 4 Godzillas?" And we'll take a drink for that Godzilla while Kip explains why he hates the Bible so much.
Do you see what that is? That's bait.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to get me to say the thing. But if I say the thing, guys, then I use up our one F-bomb. And I'm trying to be a responsible person and not cause grief for my friends and, make the algorithm do things it shouldn't do. So I'm not taking the bait. I'm not taking the bait. But I will say that I do quite a bit like the Bible in expletive terms that I've said elsewhere.
Thank you. The Behold Network for $5 says, Is this someone you recognize?
Do you know who that is? You don't know who that is?
I don't know who that is, no.
Because Milwaukee Atheist underwent a rebranding. They are now
Behold!
the Behold
Hey,
Network.
Okay.
It's Lawrence.
All right.
Hi, Lawrence.
Says, I don't know about Cyrus the Great, but I know about Cyrus o Christos, the Christ, and you know what?
Mashiach, the Messiah.
Yeah. Shouldn't there be a ha at the beginning of Mashiach for the Messiah?
Yeah, there probably should.
The Behold Network being worse in Hebrew than me. How dare? No, I'm kidding. Yeah. I cannot flex my Hebrew. I was excited like one day 2 years ago because I understood 2 Hebrew words in a row. So like I am not the guy to be high and mighty about Hebrew. My Arabic is better, and even that's not great.
And said, "Okay, Cyrus, this is about you. You're not born yet, but
But
That's ridiculous.
Right.
That is so preposterous.
The only way you can come to that conclusion is if you assume that the traditional interpretation of Isaiah is accurate. But that's the thing you're trying to demonstrate. This is just begging the question. You don't get to assume that Isaiah is what you think it is in order to demonstrate that it is what you think it is by use of the prophecy. You need independent evidence that that prophecy that you're calling it was written before Cyrus was born. But you don't have that. In fact, we have good reason to think it wasn't, because when we get to prophetic literature, we can kind of tell when it was written based on when the prophecy stopped being accurate. It's a clue.
I had a friend in grad school, and we said the only way this works, right, in their perspective, is if Isaiah's writing shit down that he's getting from God, and he's like, "Wow, I have no idea what all this shit means. Sounds pretty weird, but I've just got to keep writing it down because that's what God told me." Now, I suppose if subscribe to a world in which such things are possible, I suppose that could make some sense. But then what doesn't make any sense at all is all the scribes for decades, hundreds of years after that, going, "Wow, we don't understand what any of this means. There's a whole bunch of other shit going on out my window right now that occupies my bandwidth, but I got to keep writing this stuff down because reasons, even though I have no idea what any of it means. It's just dumb. It's
Scribes
dumb.
were also inspired.
No, what? Yeah, okay.
I mean, that's probably going to be the claim, and like,
probably
I can't prove that the scribes weren't inspired. So, like, at that point, it's like, okay, I can't say that you're definitely wrong, but what I can say is you haven't given me good reasons to think you're right.
So, just it's in Isaiah chapter 45, verse 1, right? And this is what the text says. So says Yahweh to his Mashiach, his anointed one, which is commonly translated as Messiah or transliterated as Messiah or Christ. To his
Are you saying that Cyrus was
Mashiach.
Christing this whole time?
To Cyrus, yes.
Okay.
He was deep into the burning purple. Whom I have grasped by the right hand, treading down nations before him, ungirding the loins, there's probably a more crass translation of that term, of kings, opening doors before him and letting no gate stay shut. And he goes on to talk about what Cyrus is going to do with his help. I don't know if this was legitimately some form of prophecy from 200 years before the birth of Cyrus, or 150 years or whatever. Just kind of feels like that would be a little more obvious. It sounds.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say it sounds much more likely that this is just somebody talking about Cyrus because he's watching what's going on with Cyrus.
Lieutenant Matt, the Moose Broker, for $2 says, Cyrus Al-Gaib, the voice from the Outer Plateaus. Plateau. Which I very much appreciate as someone who likes Doom. Yep. Although I gotta say, it was hard for me to initially watch the newest Doom movies because I already know the story by heart, basically. So it's like, this is a really good adaptation in many ways, although I do have some issues with it here and there. But like, it's hard for me to get into it because I know exactly what's going to happen. Like, oh no, you mean Lady Jessica survived too? Oh, shocking. I know. So, spoiler alerts, by the way, I guess.
I have yet to see the second Dune movie.
Have you seen the David Lynch Dune from the 80s?
Yeah, I sure did.
Well, it's the second half of that movie.
I'm aware of that.
Oh, okay.
So, but
About the rushed ending fight.
Well,
right.
Yeah.
You're going to take over the world, and you'll be my servant in that way.
Did he take over the world, or did he just take over like part of Mesopotamia?
Yeah, he didn't
That's
even take over the then known world.
Yeah.
He took over a lot of the then known world for the people living in what is now, like the Levant. But like, not all of it.
I think the big deal, and this is, this holds, especially for understanding that this is a text, second Isaiah, this is a text probably written by somebody who's not in the Levant and actually in Babylon, because it was a big deal that Cyrus walked into Babylon and took control of Babylon, right?
Previously, the world's premier superpower.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's history, right? This is kind of how we do it.
Yep.
Because God's in control of what happens, and then he puts that down as a test. You guys want to serve these little g gods? Well, ask them what they know about the future.
Really?
And
where's that?
I just want to counter something here real quick. He and a lot of evangelicals are constantly reassuring themselves that God is in control. And they usually say that when politics isn't going the way that they like. Which is funny to me, because if God's in control and he's going to fix everything, and your book tells you that you're the good guys and you're going to win in the end, why are you freaking out and doing everything within your power to stop things from happening that you don't like? Isn't your God supposed to be, like, more powerful than that?
No, see, he's going to work through the servants of God to get everything to go the way he wants it to. That's what it is. Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, that almost certainly is what you would get if you actually pressed Thomas say on this. Brian Thomas, that is. Like, that is almost certainly what he would say. Is like, oh yeah, you know, God's in control, but he works through his servants. Mm-hmm. All right, here we go.
And I'm saying, I'm the real God, the God who loves you, the God who wants a relationship with you, the God who knows the future. And I'm telling you right now, the future. And this guy's going to come.
A lot of gods did that.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty common thing for a god to do in the ancient, and even the modern world, really. I mean, it's not like we don't still have people claiming to be prophets of various gods, including Christians who claim to be prophets of the God of the Bible. That is still a thing that happens. Usually, those groups end up forming cults. That's usually what happens. But two relatively important Christian groups in the United States started with alleged prophets. And that would be the Seventh-day Adventists and the Jehovah's Witnesses. Oh, no, sorry, not the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons. Yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses didn't actually claim that their guy was a prophet, just that he was a really careful student of the Bible, which is why they were originally called Bible students. They actually kept that name until after World War II, if I remember correctly. And hey, in one of the rare times I'm going to give props to the JWs, the Jehovah's Witnesses are basically the reason why the United States has conscientious objector laws that can get people out of the draft, or even in some cases out of the military after they've joined. It is because of them, because they refused service during World War II on the grounds of their conscientious objection. And they sued over religious freedom, and they won that lawsuit, and that is why the category of conscientious objector exists in the United States. So, thank you, Jehovah's Witnesses, for that. I hate almost everything else you've ever done. Go there.
Yeah.
So, but I can't not say it was them, because it absolutely was them, and that was an objectively good thing that they did, in my opinion. Which I just realized I can't say it's objectively good in my opinion. Whatever, who cares? We're going to move on.
So test those gods, and if they pass the test, fine.
That's not... Is that anywhere in Isaiah? I don't remember that in Isaiah, but it's been a while.
No.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going to drink for Brian Thomas just making up things that are in Isaiah that just aren't in Isaiah.
So, I mean, what we do see in parts of the Hebrew Bible are accusations and mockery of the gods for just not being interactive, right? They don't say anything, they don't do anything, according to a number of the later writers.
Of course, I bet the followers of those gods would disagree.
Certainly, yes, right. In some of the earlier texts, like you've got the as Vish and I are currently reading in 1 Kings chapter 18 about Elijah and the prophets of Baal. You know, the expectation was that the strongest god would show up with a sign of fire, right?
Also, Baal if you're nasty.
If you're nasty. But that was probably I think that's potentially a mark of someone later working with an earlier story, and yeah. So yeah, but it's that's what's there in the text. So no, it was never, well, our God can, see the future and your God can't. As far as I'm aware, that's not really a thing.
I do want to remind everyone that we do have a pinned chat, and I would encourage you to read it if you are just coming into the stream. Just putting that out there. It is an important pinned chat to remember if you want to participate in the stream. Not that I'm angry at anyone. Everyone's fine. Don't worry about it. Let's see. We've got a super chat and a super sticker. So Lieutenant Matt the Moose Broker says, I'm just going to say that Brian probably would think that Paul Atreides is a good guy.
Huh?
And he would be very confused with Dr. Elliot Kyne's death scenes. Yeah, probably. Yeah, look, it's pretty easy to maintain that maybe Paul's the good guy for like the first maybe 2/3 of Dune. And then it's like, oh.
As soon there's two things, and you
Oh.
see this really well in the movie, which I appreciate. The new movie is when he realizes A, that he's of Harkonnen blood and descent.
Mhm.
2, embraces that, and then 3 decides, you know what? I'm just going to weaponize the Missionary Protectiva, and I'm going to become a god emperor launching a galactic holy war. That's when he has his heel turn.
Yeah, yep. Goop23 for $1.49 sends some heart sticker. It's got the 3 hearts, one's big at the bottom, and then there's 2 smaller hearts going up. Thank you very much, Goop23.
I was gonna say, there's another comment in the chat that I was gonna read. Oh, it's Pibblepunk. Hey y'all, when you define the word tautology, does that technically count as a tautology?
I don't think so.
Oh, big if true.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that. It immediately seems like it's probably not, but I'll think about it more. Olivia Williams, who's been a member for 40 months, and is at the tetrapod level, says, so many people don't understand that about Paul. Yeah, well, it's because people are used to the protagonist of a book being the good guy. And the thing is, Paul might not be a good guy, but he's absolutely the protagonist of that book. So.
Yep.
All right, we just got 5.
That's over 3 years, 40 months. That's a long time.
Yeah, it's a very long time. Metageeky Platypus Librarian just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Thank you so much. Let's take 5 drinks while Kip tells us what he thinks of the Butlerian Jihad.
Well, I'm not going to, because instead I'm going to read this question from DM Nims for Now Wing, who asks both Vishanti and me, did the Old Testament God want a relationship with the individual, or is that a Christian thing? By the way, I'm trying to do my best Vish air quotes with relationship, because she does it so well. Did the OT God want a relationship with the individual, or is that a Christian thing? Vish, thoughts?
Yeah, he did, because he literally does things on their behalf. He engages them in a covenant, which is a
Individual?
2-party agreement. And he speaks like to the patriarchs individually and cuts individual covenants with them and their kids. And like, you're pretty much engaged with him kind of whether you want to or not. And this idea of like a relationship that you think about, like intimacy, some of that takes its cues from the Hebrew Bible, but it's not exactly the same as the way you're thinking of it in like Protestant evangelicalism. Like their ideas of relationship is a little bit different. Like there are similarities, of course, but I don't know. There's a lot of things that you could say there. I say it's a yes and no question, but there's also the issue of consent. Like, I'm your God. Kind of deal with it.
Deal with it.
I would also point out that the idea of the personal relationship with God that you get from, say, evangelical Protestantism is not ubiquitous throughout Christianity. You won't find too many, like, Catholic or Orthodox priests talking about your personal walk with God as if he's supposed to be your buddy that you're going to hang out and watch movies with or, like, go to the park with.
Yeah. I mean, like, there is some things in Catholicism that you could discuss, like people have a special devotion to the Holy Spirit, or people are super into Mary. And in that sense, like, yeah, there's shades of that, but it's not consistent. Obviously, religions are internally diverse.
Yeah. A lot of this tends to be colored by the ways in which we, in the modern world, the ways in which we express relationships that we have with people who are super close to us, right?
Yeah.
So
I think there's another thing
the same,
where people have this idea that God gives me individually special, personal, bespoke revelation. That's, I think, a different shade entirely.
And a dangerous
in
one.
A lot of, yeah, and what you see in the ancient Near East is communal revelation. Like there's a body of like maybe priests or intermediaries or prophets, and even when you have a single prophet like Balaam, right? He can interact with various gods from different pantheons, but that seems to be like an exception. It doesn't seem to be the standard that there's like a traveling prophet interacting with all sorts of people like for hire or whatnot. It's like you tend to engage your people in the communal sense.
Yeah. And also, I do want to point out, I think that a lot of the individualistic idea of a relationship with God that is special to you and not broadly part of the communal group that happens in a lot of Christianity comes ultimately from things like the perspicuity of the scripture and the idea from Protestantism that a personal interpretation of the scripture is perfectly fine because you're being led by the Holy Spirit, which then kind of turns into everyone gets to have their own private version of whatever it is, which then decentralizes the corporate aspects of the religion, which, I mean, I'm not sitting here making some kind of judgment call. I am just saying that traditionally, other forms of Christianity, then and still now, are primarily a corporate thing, and that your religion is not supposed to be something that is personal to you. You are part of the wider community of Christians of your particular group, and that's why, you know, the various holidays and whatnot aren't family gatherings. They're community gatherings at the church, and that's where all those traditional things happen, right? Like, for instance, Easter egg hunts are something that a lot of Protestants do at home. Whereas if you were, say, going to a Greek church, the Easter egg thing is people bringing dyed eggs to the church and having them as part of their post-Easter feast now that the fast is over.
That's interesting because I worked at a Southern Baptist church, which was very kind of not like typical Southern Baptist churches, which is why I stayed there for so long. They had a community Easter egg hunt. So they would have people, bring
like
eggs. Yeah, and they would have that's just the way people did it. And I also noticed that with other churches in the Deep South where I grew up, that they had community Easter egg hunts. Like you might have one at home, obviously, with your parents or whatnot, but whatever the churches were doing, they would make it like a big event and you'd bring all the kids and it's very cute and everything. So
I'm a big fan of communal
it's just
festivals.
very diverse.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I'm Jewish, so I'm rocking that communal festival vibe.
Right. That's for me, because that's one of the things is I think that one of the biggest values that you can get out of a religious affiliation is a community. And I feel like to some extent, if you're not getting that, then why are you bothering? Like, just don't.
And
now, I get that if you've joined some religious community that means a lot to you, and you now find yourself in a life circumstance where it's hard for you to find that community. I get it, and I get why you don't abandon it. But if that's not even the ideal, I just don't get it. It doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah, here's the thing, like, because humans are a very social species, and one of the major reasons that we've survived for so long and we've gotten so smart and we've thrived and evolved is because we're social, and social networks are part of what kept us alive. It's how we developed agriculture and cities and civilizations and things like that. So that's not a trait that you can just turn off. It's not healthy for us. And yeah, that's a whole aspect that a lot of people just ignore. They are still doing the hyper individualistic Western thing, and they think you can just flip off these switches that we spent, hundreds of thousands of years, possibly millions, evolving in order to stay alive and to get smart. So that's very frustrating to me, is just trying to ignore the aspect of social community that we really need, not just for our mental health, but also our literal actual survival.
That's one of the reasons why I have movie time after these streams for the community.
That's right. But also I was going to say, in reference to, relationships and your personal bespoke individual relationship with God, is you were talking about how a lot of these people tend to have their own tailor-made special revelation version of Christianity. And there's one of the epistles that said, no prophecy is of a private interpretation. And I find that ironic, because I've heard sermons on this where pastors will say, when you're reading the Bible, there's no private interpretation. And then obviously what they mean by that is, well, my opinion and my seminary and my denomination is the one that gets to determine the meaning, but not you out in the pews. If you disagree, no, that's a private interpretation and that's bad. It's ironic.
Yep. I'm going to hit play because we're not technically supposed to be talking about the differences between corporate level worship versus individual religiosity and whatnot.
We're engaging with the community via super chat.
I get it. I'm just going to hit play though.
Okay.
But I'm letting you know that they won't. And it's so fun to see right there in the very pages of our Bibles. He names Cyrus, and then you flip over to, Daniel and Jeremiah, and you could see.
Okay, remind me, Kip, do we have good evidence for saying that Daniel and Jeremiah were written contemporaneously to the events that they are depicting?
Daniel, no. Jeremiah, some
of it, yeah.
Maybe even a bunch, but even there, like there's stuff in the way that we talk about Jeremiah in similar terms to Isaiah, although it works itself out differently because not every text is constructed and collected in the same way. But when we talk about Jeremiah, we tend to divide it in terms of layers. Jeremiah A, B, and C material. Jeremiah A material is stuff that scholars like to trace back to an historical Jeremiah. Jeremiah B material is that tends to be mostly like the oracles of the nations. I think is where almost all of it is, which is a trope, right? Like this is a prophetic trope that you see throughout a whole bunch of the 8th, 7th, 6th century Hebrew prophets. This was just one of the ways in which they wrote their texts using this pretty type of literature. And then the Jeremiah C material is later, and this is like a more strongly Deuteronomistic redaction layer. So this is a layer of the text that is more beholden to things that appear in the book of Deuteronomy or in the Deuteronomistic history, even though Jeremiah himself seems to have been, if there was a Jeremiah, I think there probably was, he seems to have been pretty into the Deuteronomistic reforms when they happened and maybe like lived through them. So, but Daniel, absolutely not. Daniel's a fictional character. It's an obviously fictional book when you read it. Like it's just, and I think intended to be a fictional book at the time when these stories were collected together. A composite book.
Counterpoint though, there, Kip. If Daniel's so fictional, then how come there's no evidence of a dragon in Babylon that he obviously killed it, and that's why it's not there anymore?
Obviously, right?
Feeding it a bunch of fat and hair and tar all boiled together.
It's a great method for slaying the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why.
It's belly burst.
George
that's why.
Didn't think of it.
Well,
so
George was a soldier, so
I guess that's
when,
fair.
When all you have is a spear or something, then every problem looks like a stabby problem.
Yeah, for sure. So it's where was I?
I just realized a bunch of
Daniel,
people who are only familiar with like the Protestant or Masoretic text version of Daniel have no freaking clue what I'm talking about with the dragon.
And that's to say nothing about the Dead Sea Scrolls. That actually was part of the point I was about to make. So you're right on there, Dapper. Within the Dead Sea Scrolls, we actually have other now, and importantly, the Book of Daniel was written in two languages, the book in Aramaic and in Hebrew, and it looks like those portions of the book actually developed separately. And one of the reasons we know this is because the book starts in Hebrew and the narrative runs through chapter 1 and part of chapter 2 until Nebuchadnezzar has a dream that is really troubling to him, and then his religious, his magicians and his
Soothsayers?
soothsayers, his mystics, come to him because he wants to know what's going on in the dream. And it says that he spoke to them in Aramaic, and then the text quotes what he said in Aramaic, but then it just never switches back. It just doesn't. It just continues in Aramaic through the rest of chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, even though these are all different stories. And then after Daniel chapter 7, it's back to Hebrew again. So, scholars tend to look at this and go, oh, see, like they had a bunch of Aramaic literature. They put this Hebrew introduction on it, and then, just ran with what was left in the Aramaic text. The really cool thing about the Dead Sea Scrolls is we have what look like individual copies of just Aramaic, Daniel. And in addition to that, we have other fragments of other Daniel stories, also written in Aramaic, that didn't make it into, the Aramaic collection of Daniel tales. So, fiction. People looked at this and see that this is like collections of stories that early Jews like to tell in Aramaic about this guy who, didn't exist. And they told these stories to make oftentimes moralistic points about living abroad in diasporic communities away from the land. And what do you do when you're surrounded by a bunch of Gentiles?
You don't eat their food.
No.
You know what, though? I will say this. Nebuchadnezzar, there's a lot that you can critique about him. However, I do find his method of not necessarily testing his mystics, per se, but saying, listen, I had a dream and it really fucked me up. I need y'all to tell me what the dream meant. And they're like, yeah, sure. Can you describe the dream? He's like, no. You're going to have to tell me what I dreamed.
I'm a
You're like,
skeptic.
Wait, what? How are we supposed to tell you what it means if you won't describe it? And he's like, oh, that seems like a you problem.
Yeah,
Mr.
right.
Mystics.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, why should I call the psychic? They should know when I need them. They should call me.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah. Take that, Miss Cleo.
Probably not something that the real who knows? Maybe Nebuchadnezzar was actually like
Nebuchadnezzar was
that,
a skeptic.
Maybe.
I don't know.
We
We
can't
don't
say he
know.
wasn't.
So one of the things that I see when I see the Hebrew Bible presenting this king Nebuchadnezzar is they were really, really hung up on him as the thing that they seem to remember him most for was just being super, super powerful and arrogant. Nebuchadnezzar is constantly, and I am not just talking about the Daniel text, but other texts in the Hebrew Bible which seem to reflect on Nebuchadnezzar. That's the thing, is just his pride and his arrogance before the God of Israel, which I find interesting.
I'm going to hit play.
The fulfillment of what God said was going to happen with this guy. And he was named that, and he did take over the world. And anyway, that's Cyrus. But we have the Cyrus cylinder. You don't have to open the page of the Bible to learn about Cyrus.
Yeah, absolutely.
So his name is in the artifacts as well.
Yeah.
In fact, I might say that if you want to learn anything about Cyrus, the Bible's maybe not a great place to go.
Yeah, the focus on Cyrus in the Bible is just his release of the Israelites from captivity, and then that's basically it. He's kind of gone.
Yeah,
doesn't tell you much.
He was more than all that, and we have quite a few sources which tell us a lot more about Cyrus, which is great.
One of the things that is, it's always striking to me about this kind of talk that you get from various apologists, because this isn't a particularly creationist endeavor that's going on here, right? You can find non-creationist apologists who are going to be doing this. And by creationist, I mean like special creation, not general creation. Is that there's this idea that like either the Bible falls or stands as a unit, and that's weird to me, right? Like, you could say, hey, there's a lot of stuff that we can verify is historically accurate in, say, Jeremiah, right? Okay, cool. That amount of like verification and amount of like we can say like, oh yeah, these are real events that happened, does not then transfer onto say like Judges or Exodus or Genesis or Kings, right?
Yeah, right.
Because these aren't the same text. The Bible isn't a book; it is a library of books that various. Yeah, it's basically what connects it is that various communities use these books liturgically and for devotional purposes. Not that they are a single work by a single author with a single point of view or a single story of history or even a single level of reliability in terms of actual historicity. They're not all that. And it's very weird to me because even if we could say with 100% confidence every single word of Jeremiah as it comes down to us today in the Masoretic text or the Septuagint, whatever you want, pick one, is 100% historically accurate and happened literally, that doesn't tell us a damn thing about Genesis and whether or not any of it's true. And spoiler alert, pretty much everything in Genesis, except for some place names, is not true. None of it happened. Some of the places it mentions are real, right? Like, that's it. In fact, some of the nations it mentions don't seem to have existed at the time that it starts mentioning them. So, like, yeah. And the thing is,
Moabite,
yeah,
Philistine,
and vice versa.
Yeah.
Even though we know that, like, say, I don't know, the Book of Joshua, like, none of that happened, right? But let's say we found out that it did. That doesn't give us any particular confidence about, like, I don't know, the books of Chronicles, right? That's a separate question. And yet it seems like, and because I know that is what the thought process is, that if you can say, oh, any evidence for the historicity of any one part of the Bible is thereby going to be transferred to all the rest of the Bible by osmosis, I guess, because you put them between the same covers.
Yeah,
which is also
an extension.
Not a ubiquitous practice in Christianity. Not all Christian groups typically bind the entire Bible for liturgical purposes within one set of covers. In fact, many churches, if you walk in, unless they have like a library with some Bibles in it, won't typically contain a single book that contains the entire biblical canon of that church.
It's just an extension of the commitment to univocality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is the thing that I was alluding to in what it really was just me venting and blowing off steam this week on Blue Sky, but I made just kind of a mini thread where I was talking about how very terminally online atheists that are very much of the r/atheism vibe and anti-theists, they are just as dogmatic and ill-informed about the way that religion and the texts work for every other system as people who are fundamentalists. Because they also have this idea, well, the whole Bible stands and falls as a unit, so if I can prove that the earth wasn't created in 6 days, that whole book is trash. It's like, girl,
nope.
You are just as ignorant of this anthology of texts as fundamentalists.
Yeah, you just have the opposite bias.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same kind of bias that leads to nonsense like mythicism and stuff like that, or like every single Christian tradition was actually stolen from like Western European pagans, even the ones that are shared in places like, you know, Iran with indigenous Iranian Christians whose history goes back 2,000 years into the Church of the East.
Yep.
Yeah. No, they probably weren't getting their various Christmas and Easter traditions from freaking Germanic gods, guys, in Persia. Probably not. Yeah, it's the same thing. Like, look, I get that a lot of people who were raised evangelical or whatever had a lot of religious trauma, and then when they left that, decided to go as hard the opposite way as possible. But it turns out that all you're doing there is trading one set of harmful dogmas for a different one, and maybe don't do that. Now, they might be less harmful, depending on exactly how you're practicing whatever it is that you're doing now. But they're still harmful, and they're still silly. And you should still critically examine those too. You shouldn't simply flip the switch from one side to the other, like you're the evil doll from the Halloween episode of The Simpsons, where, oh, I see what your problem is here. You gotta flip the switch from evil to good. And there you go. Like, that's not how anything works.
Yep.
Also, I had to work in a
using
Simpsons
the
reference.
using the same set of arguments that fundamentalists use for why Jews shouldn't exist.
Yeah, that'll happen. As part of your
oh,
deconstruction,
so-
maybe deconstruct any anti-Semitism that you might have in there.
Yeah.
For sure.
So there's some.
Yeah, and I
There's
think
so many more.
I mean, we could talk for hours about just archaeology. I mean, even these books.
Well, he could. I don't know if she could. I'm not sure that she could talk about anything for hours because I haven't seen any actual evidence of her ever having a conversation. Which, to be fair, is probably unfair because she's probably, again, this is just part of her job that she finds onerous. And for all I know, she's a great conversationalist when she's interested in the topic. So, sorry, person. I don't mean to be too mean to you, especially since I'm pretty sure that you know even less about this topic than Brian Thomas does. So I can definitely chalk up most of what you do to ignorance. Joshua Geese has gifted 10 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Thank you so much. That actually is extremely awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 10 sips while Vishanti tells us why Mothra is her favorite of the Toho Kaiju.
I like Mothra. She is always caring for other kaiju. She's Godzilla's wife. She sacrifices herself for others, which is a very admirable trait. She's angelic. And she's got a beautiful song.
That was very convincing.
That was. Lieutenant Matt the Most Broker for $2 says, we could talk for hours. Please don't. Well, I mean, this whole video isn't actually even a full hour long, so, like, don't worry. Of course, we're going to talk for hours, but, you know.
It just feels like it. It's our fault.
It is. It's because we stop so much. And we have so many tangents, but you know what? They're good tangents, so I don't mind. Plus, you know, let's be honest. The videos we respond to are an excuse for the tangents. They are a springboard for the conversations that we're having about a topic. So that literally, it doesn't matter how fast we get through these. As long as we're staying in a relevant sort of circle of what we're talking about, it's fine.
Books that we have on the table here, they are just filled with just numerous archaeological finds, and
they're
they're
just
still
filled with garbage, I'm sure.
I mean, yeah, probably for the most part. Because you got to realize, ICR is a group that believes things that are at odds with virtually everything we know to be true about reality in every aspect. Which means if it's a book that they carry in their bookstore, it is almost certainly going to be complete nonsense. Because if it weren't, then it probably wouldn't comport to the things that they believe.
happening. We're still discovering archaeological artifacts that further
As opposed to what other kind of artifact, but I'm being mean.
Just proclaim the truth and the accuracy of scripture, which is just incredible.
No, we're not, though. I mean, every once in a while, sure, we do find something that we can say, hey, look, this thing from the Bible seems to be somewhat accurate in some way. But what we're not doing is finding all sorts of archaeological corroboration for most of the specific stories in the Bible that they happened in that specific way. In fact, in many cases, it's not even clear how we could find an artifact that would do that, right? Like, if you wanted to demonstrate the truth of, like, I don't know, the particular stories about King Ahab or something, right? What archaeological evidence would you expect to find? I don't even know. Like, you could find inscriptions that mention that king, but that just tells you that a king existed, right? Like, what would it be? Even in cases where we think there's a pretty good chance that, like, there's a lot of historical fact in here. Like we said, like Jeremiah, right? A lot of the stuff recorded in Jeremiah probably pretty historical. But what archaeology would confirm a particular story? It's hard to say. We have things like, we can say things like, we see a cultural level where there's evidence of like reconstruction of a wall or something like that, right? And say, okay, that's broadly lines up with the Bible. But it's sort of like when people say things like, how come we don't have any artifacts that belong to Jesus? It's like, well, first of all, why would we ever expect to? And second, how would you know if we did? Do you think he went around writing his name on everything? And also, his name wasn't particularly unique. So even if he did, again, how would you know?
I just have to, like, that reminds me of this was, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. There was a guy, he had a PhD. He was a scholar of sorts, I guess, at one point in time, but he ran this outfit called the Dead Sea Scrolls Foundation, which used to raise, it would go fundraising to collect money for the publication of the discoveries in the Judean Desert Series, the official publication of the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? It's laudable. It's a good endeavor, but he was like a pretty strongly committed Christian, apologetic type of Christian, and he would give lectures that would kind of make you go, okay. One time he was giving a lecture and went talking. He got on to the so-called Great Isaiah Scroll, 1Q Isaiah A, this completely intact copy of the book of Isaiah that dates to, between 100 and 150 BCE. And he's talking about a lot of the great things about this manuscript. And then he starts in on this bit where he says, now, just suppose, he said, suppose we could, like, see fingerprints on the back of the scroll, and say we could extract DNA from some of these fingerprints on the back of the scroll. And then he said, now I'm not saying this was the scroll that Jesus read in the synagogue as we read in chapter 11.
I can guarantee it wasn't.
So, I'm not saying it was, but you never know. And then even if you could, and that's the thing, right? I'm like, this is so, I mean, it's dumb just to think that if you're extracting DNA from an artifact from 2,000 years ago, I mean, what are you going to be able to say from the DNA?
You'll likely be able to get a probable sex. You'll be able to get haplogroup information. You'll be able to check for like various genetic diseases, maybe depending on how good the sample is. But so, in order to say, "Oh, this is Jesus' DNA," you would have to have a confirmed sample of Jesus' DNA. Which how would you get? Same thing with fingerprints.
Exactly.
If you had Jesus' fingerprints on a scroll, how would we know they're Jesus' fingerprints?
Exactly.
You don't have his hand handy unless you do, in which case that's a much more interesting thing, because how the heck did that happen? And how did you know it was his hand? That's a whole story right there. Poor Claire, who's been a member for 8 months at the amulet level, thank you very much, who seems to have a cat as the profile picture, or maybe it's a dog, it's hard to say at this resolution, and who's at the amulet level says, who has ever said if one thing in the Bible is wrong, everything else must be wrong? I mean, to some extent, these guys would say that. They say that kind of thing all the time, right? They're like, oh, well, if the story of Adam and Eve isn't true, then the whole thing is just nonsense. I'm like, okay, if that's your position, sure, I guess. Seems like a weird position to take.
KIG.
Yeah. If one thing is wrong, it does prove the Bible isn't infallible. That is true. It does prove that.
Maybe they could do DNA comparisons on the Shroud of Turin, Dapper.
You would have to then first demonstrate that the Shroud of Turin is actually the burial shroud of Jesus and not someone else. And
Cameron Bertuzzi assures me that this is a thing.
Well, he's an expert.
Gary Habermas, too, is, I believe, 80% convinced that the Shroud of Turin is...
Really?
Well, I grade his opinions on a pretty steep curve.
He's written gigantic books, Vish. Much more gigantic than my humble little book here.
Available in all reputable bookstores worldwide, and the way you know they're
That's right.
reputable is if they carry the book.
That's it.
And as you mentioned,
Three more
scripture
really quick.
self-death.
He has interrupted her every time she has opened her mouth. Shut up, Ryan. What the hell, dude? Like, I get it. There's really little point for her to be here, but you don't have to be a dick about it. I'm trying not to just go the obvious route, which is just to say this is just blatant misogyny, but I'm not sure that I can actually legitimately think of another reason.
Mansplaining?
Yeah.
Let me
mansplaining his way
just
through
tell
this.
y'all. Most
No, see,
men.
hold on, Vish. What you don't understand.
Most men talk over women and are not even aware that they are doing it.
Yep.
They're not even aware. They don't know that they're doing it. They're just
Mhm.
not paying that much attention. They start talking, and because, women in the West especially are socialized to not overtalk people, we will just stop. And they're used to that. So they don't notice it. And this is one of the first things my sociology professor in college was talking about. It was like one of the first maybe lectures in the first 2 weeks. And the whole class was like, wait, what? And then he goes, no, just go into a group conversation, just sit there and listen, just observe, take notes. And the next week, everyone came back and they were like, oh my God. And he was like, right? And from that day forward, it changed how I interact in group dynamics and how I pay attention to group dynamics. And woo! It's one of those things like kerning. Once you know, you can't unknow.
It's a cognito hazard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, I do know
Big
some
time.
people. I do know some people who went on voice calls on the internet, just interrupt everybody, man or woman.
Ugh.
Oh yes.
That happens.
Yes.
Whereas I was always trained that in voice calls, when someone, unless you're intending to talk over someone, the instant someone else starts talking, everyone should just shut up once there's crosstalk so we can figure out what the heck's going on. But apparently, some people didn't get that message. All right, here we go.
And that's one of the things about, I was telling Kip about this yesterday, is whenever I'm on a call, I really do try not to overtalk people, but there is a split second delay on my Bluetooth earbuds.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
So I'm not doing it on purpose. It's just that there's a delay and I don't always know how to compensate for that.
Well, that's why. Oh, sorry. That's why I like the convention that once it happens, everyone should stop. We can figure out what's going on. And I tend to actually it's not perfect, but the group that I have assembled for my TTRPGs, they tend to be pretty good with that. Not always. Sometimes I get excited, but it's one of the reasons why I've selected them. Is because they know for the most part how to shut up.
Yeah. Plus, I have become more aware of my neurodivergence, and I catch myself often. I caught myself at DragonCon a few weeks ago. We were sitting in a room decompressing from the whole week, and I was like, oh, and I started to come in with a thought, and I stopped myself. I was like, oh, it can wait. Someone else is in the middle of a thing, So it's just one of those things you kind of have to devote just a little bit of processing power to it, and then it'll kind of become more of a habit. So, working on it.
All right. I'm going to assume that Brian Thomas is going to keep doing this, and it's going to keep annoying me, but I'm going to hit play anyway.
Yes, go
Can
for
I do
it.
3 more really quick?
Absolutely.
I just love this. Here's the black obelisk of Shalmaneser III. It's a little over 6 feet tall. The reason I like this one is it has on it a Jehu. It says on the obelisk, Jehu, son of Omri. Anyway, and it shows him. And so
it shows Jehu on the obelisk?
And it's the only likeness that we have of any of the
That's
kings.
not what he looked like, but okay.
I mean, yeah, it's
These are stylized. They're idealized.
Yeah, for one thing, I'm guessing that Jehu didn't wear a Phrygian cap because,
right?
He wasn't a Phrygian.
Not.
I'm going to take a drink for Brian Thomas thinks that apparently Jehu, son of Omri, wore a Phrygian cap. It turns out that someone's quote-unquote likeness in the ancient world wasn't always based on the actual person's appearance, but was often an idealized and symbolic representation. Spoiler alert.
That's one of... Yeah.
A lot of the pharaohs of Egypt, of whom we have many statues looking like, statuesque, hence the term, in real life, because we also have a lot of mummies, they didn't look like that, because they were inbred weirdos like the Habsburgs. Turns out,
and
when your grandmother is your grandfather's sister, and your mom is also their kid, and your dad is also their kid, and you married your sister, well... Yeah.
That's one of those things about Tutankhamun's father, right?
Yeah, he actually had real likenesses.
He went kind of out of his way to have people depict him more or less as he looked. And that's the reason he looks so bizarre, because most of them didn't do that. And you come up here and you see his depiction, and you're like, wait, whoa, what's going on with this guy? And if you don't really understand that he's just like, yeah, no, don't idealize it. Just draw me. Carve me as I am. That's how probably more of them looked than you'd like to admit.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly, you get the opposite trend in Rome's transitioning from Republican Rome to Imperial Rome. Yeah.
God, for whatever reason, my brain couldn't figure out his name.
When you start off in Republican Rome, a lot of the statues are like hyper realistic and depict people with like wrinkles and like crooked noses and whatever. And then you get to Imperial Rome, and suddenly everyone is carved consciously, like a carving of a Greek god. Like, it was an intentional move. Like, we're going to carve the emperors and generals like statues in Greek temples. All right, we got to
something.
But after
you read your super chats, and then I'll tell you something really cool.
Lieutenant Matthew Moosebroker for $2 says he's impressed by the big black obelisk. Yes, I mean, it is a very impressive big black obelisk. It's
very impressive.
I mean, it's 6 feet tall. That's pretty big. Joshua McGee's for $5 says Black Obelisk 2001: A Space Odyssey in the Bible confirmed.
That's right.
Also, Kerbal Space Program confirmed, because that game has like 7 or 8 Black Obelisks, I think. Lieutenant Matt the Moose Broker for another $5 says the Habsburgs were amateurs compared to the Ptolemies. True. Very
yep.
true.
There was a video that came out this week that was like, wait, who's more inbred? The Targaryens from, the fictional George R.R. Martin world, or the Ptolemies? And
let me guess, it's the Ptolemies. Yeah. No.
Wow, eh?
Yeah.
All right. So,
Woo!
Something really cool at the University of Manchester, which has a big-ass museum right there on campus, is their collection of, it's got to be at least a dozen. It might be closer to 20. I hesitate to call them sarcophagi, but they're like, they're boxes for bodies from Alexandria. So this is from the Ptolemaic period. This is Hellenistic, and at this time, it was, people wanted to be buried in these stone boxes. They could not afford to have them stylized and carved elaborately like the way the pharaohs did it, right? So what they did is they would pose for portraits, paintings that an artist would make, and then they'd set those on the top of the, and like this is second century BCE, and these portraits do look very much like real actual people,
right?
Which is awesome. It's awesome because I like the fact that in antiquity, in this period, the depictions we have of like the kings and the emperors and stuff are probably not much at all good representations of what they actually looked like. Whereas the common people, right? The common people that we have these stronger senses of who they actually were and what they were doing.
I think some of those Nero coins might have been kind of accurate because I don't see why else he would have that big old double chin and the scraggly beard.
That's fair, right?
Yeah, you look at some of the Nero coins and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
this cannot be an intentionally flattering thing, and if it is, what did he actually look like?
Or we just
Right.
maybe don't understand the full extent of flattery.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Perhaps.
Yeah, maybe.
Also, I do want to kind of maybe table this for a later conversation. It could be off stream, but Kip, I find it interesting that the carvings here, not just of Jehu, but the delegation that's with him, I would much be interested in discussion of the depiction of their robes, because the two people right behind Jehu, they have 4 tassels hanging off a little cornered garment.
Oh, look at that, eh? That's interesting.
Uh-huh. The other people in the delegation look just like Shalmaneser's folks, but with beards and Phrygian caps for some reason. But
Phrygian caps
I'm interested
cool.
to see. Yeah, they are, and they're probably really comfy. But I'm also really interested to see if anybody's written about this or discussed. Like, are these what we later understood as tzitzit, or is what's going on here? So yeah, just things I notice.
We have a super chat from Kent Jeffrey of Arimathea Halstead for $4.99, which says, learning about ancient idealism art is like art history 101. Americans be interested in history other than military and political challenge. Yeah, I mean, it is a whole blind spot for a lot of Americans in terms of history. And a lot of that is that, like, art history isn't part of, like, mainstream, like, public school history curriculum, right? You have to intentionally seek that stuff out independently until you get to at least college, and even then you're not going to get that unless you're intentionally doing that kind of thing. And in fact, I got a history degree, and I think the entire time that I got that history degree, there was one class like a whole semester, I mean one class session on one day that ever mentioned art history, and it was about Christian art history. And then for some reason the on the the PowerPoint, the title slide had a bust of a Roman senator from the Republic period. And so, of course, me being the little shit that I am, the first thing I did was raise my hand. I was like, Professor, if this is about Christian history, why do we have a Republican senatorial bust on the slide? And, of course, my professor got that, what the hell, man? Look, and was like, yes, this is in fact not a piece of Christian art. This is indeed an Imperial Republic.
It's like, okay, man, you knew what you were doing.
But I like it, and that's why it's on the front cover of this. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was showing off a little bit. I'm a dick.
I do want to say, Egyptomaniac in the chat says the mummy portraits are great. Also, the ones we have of private people, they look really lifelike.
Yeah.
And I like that. I think that's great. I love engaging with ancient people as they were. That's part of the reason that I love doing the genealogy and historical work that I do. Because you read the text, you read people's diaries, you read little notes in the margins, and you just go, they're just like us. They're just regular people. It's really cool.
Jake, insert clever Dapper inside joke here. Nelson for $5 says, this audience is a bunch of nerdverts that long their tangents long and thick. Yeah.
Like
their tangents long and thick. Yeah, I mean,
it's true.
You're not wrong. But hey, you know what? Sometimes art history is cool, and it's something that I feel like more people should know about. All right, but I am going to hit play.
In the Bible.
Wow.
And there he is, kneeling and bowing.
That's called prostrating, in case you're wondering.
Yes.
Prostrating, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's where your knees, and your hands, and your forehead hit the ground. It's a prostration.
There's a pretty visceral description of that in the biblical text when they say that someone's nose, they touch their nose literally to the earth.
Yes.
In fact, actually, prostration is something that happens in a lot of religions. It happens in Christianity. Yes. It happens in Islam. It happens in Judaism. It happens in various forms of Hindu and Buddhist worship. It happens a lot, actually. It doesn't happen much in evangelical Protestantism, which I'm not saying as a critique. I'm just saying maybe that's why he doesn't know the word. But yeah, it happens in a lot of places. In fact, sorry.
No, I was going to say it's also worth pointing out that the same word that's used for prostrating, before a king or before a respected individual in biblical Hebrew is the same word that's used for worship of God or of Yahweh. Most of the time.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Also, wait, Becca Justiniano in the chat writes, "We need an all tangent special stream. Here's the topic. Don't talk about it."
All right. Look, remind me next time, and I'll set up the super chat goal that in addition to releasing Kip, we'll also have a tangent talk. Because we've done that before, right?
Amazing.
We did like the horror movie tangent stream where we just talked
And
about horror
food.
movies and food. Yeah, we did that too.
Yes.
So like we can do that. That's a thing I'm happy to do. But we have to hit some kind of thing. And here's the reason why, right? Those streams don't get as many views, and this is a job. And so, in order for me to be able to afford to do a stream that isn't going to get as many views, I need to also have something before that makes it so I can make that sacrifice. Because it is actually a pretty big deal if I have a stream that, like, say, half as many people show up to, and I only get, like, $20 or something in super chats. Because that hits the budget. So, that's why I do that, is I have to have it as a goal, because otherwise it's hard for me to justify just from a financial standpoint, which is not that I'm saying that I don't appreciate and that you guys are like insufficiently generous or something. It's just that it's a concern I have. I have to pay bills. So, sorry, Vishanti.
I was going to say, Kip, I have heard Protestants getting very defensive when someone points out that their very emotionally invested tribalism in a sports team is a form of worship. And they go, well, no, I'm not bowing down to them, so therefore I'm not worshiping it. As if that's the only way you worship things. And then this week, Religion for Breakfast puts out a video about how, like, sports teams and people's tribalism is a religion. And I was like, yes!
Now, I also want to be fair. I have also heard sermons from Protestant clergy about people taking their sports fandom as like too seriously and turning it into a religious type worship, and saying how maybe you should take a step back and assess whether or not what you're doing is actually replacing whatever worship you ought to be doing with your sports. So like it does cut both ways there in terms of that. So I don't want to.
Also, Egyptomaniac Maniac in the chat says, to prostrate oneself in ancient Egyptian is Santa. I hope I didn't butcher that. And it translates to smelling the earth.
That's cool.
I love that.
You can't butcher it too much, because we don't have a great grasp on ancient Egyptian phonology or pronunciation. So like, don't worry about it too much.
I was gonna point out that I believe he was Harvard evolutionary biologist Edward Wilson once wrote a book called Consilience, where he made a lot of these same points about the cross section between religion and sports, which I really appreciated. So yeah.
And it's like, I'm not trying to dunk on it and go, ew, religion. I'm just saying, listen, this is what humans do. Yeah. This is just an outgrowth of how we are societally, how we form social networks and identities and communities and things like that. That's just how we do.
Yeah, that's also
moral judgment.
That's also why I'm always skeptical of anyone who's like, oh, religion is going to die out. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, never.
No, it's not.
Now, I will say on the other end of this, I tend to also get a little frustrated at how far some evangelicals want to extend this idea, as if you can apply religion extremely broadly to all sorts of things, which is usually how they end up suggesting that everybody who is all atheist or secular activities, so-called, fit categories of religion. I'm like, oh, no. In many ways,
you watch too many makeup tutorials. That's your religion now.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
No, it's not.
Yeah. So no, this is just a way of making you feel better about your own religious activities within a larger world that doesn't value them in the same way.
Why do you need to do that? Just do what you want. Just be okay with it.
My goodness.
If your thing is going to church 4 times a week, then great. Have fun with it. Jeez.
Yeah.
Right. that's the same thing that like people justifying their own kind of procedure that's projecting like, well, they're doing it too, because on some level, like fundamentalist creationists, like literal 6-day folks, they know on some level that they have already assumed the conclusion and they're just looking for evidence and filtering out the stuff that doesn't agree. So they're like, well, yeah, would the secular atheist scientists just assume that the Bible's not true? And they go looking for evidence that's like, no, honey. You're just protecting.
I'm gonna hit play.
Before this Shalmaneser, who was a Syrian king at the time, and showing obeisance. And anyway, so he's
Ooh, there's a $5 word. Obeisance.
It's a good one.
named as a king. He's named on here. His father's named on here as well, and it dates to exactly the right time that we would expect if Jehu was a real king.
Yeah, and he probably was.
To quote Josh Bowen, therefore what?
Right, exactly. Where do we go from there? Also, I don't think I read this, but Naramda puts for $2 says, Super Chat, go brrr. And thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Doing exactly what the Bible suggests he did. And, you know, the timing lines up and everything. And I got to see it. So when I was at the...
Okay, that is actually cool. I'm not going to pretend. It is cool when you get to see neat artifacts like that in person.
British Museum some years ago, I was looking forward...
Of course, it's in the British Museum.
Everything's in the frickin' British Museum. There's a reason that one Killmonger scene hits so hard when he steals all the Wakandan artifacts.
Oh my god. That is one of my favorite scenes in the entire MCU. Where he's like, we'll take it. And she's like, it's not for sale. Oh, well then, how did you get it?
Right.
What? Sorry, what is that? What is that
good.
from?
It's from Black Panther. The antagonist goes into a museum and grabs a bunch of Wakandan artifacts. And when the museum docent or whoever she is like, well, these aren't for sale. And he's like, well, how did you get them? And she's like, oh. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to do it the same way.
He's
like, okay, that's what I thought. Bye.
Yeah. I just have to say this because I'm currently working on a script with Paulogia for a new video, and we're responding to a guy named Joel Kramer, who's amateur archaeologist who does a lot of content and has like almost a million subscribers. It's ridiculous. But he spends a lot of time talking about this amazing place in Berlin called the Pergamon Museum, because this is where the Ishtar Gate is. And it's one of those things, right, that is continually frustrating to me. I think the Pergamon Museum is incredible. The reason it's incredible is because, they've reconstructed not just the Ishtar Gate, but also the Miletus Market Gate and the Pergamon altar in this building, and then just basically built the building around these things because they are gigantic, right?
Yeah.
And of course, this is what you did in the 19th century when you just took shit from other countries as if it belonged to you.
It's a long-standing tradition. You know that obelisk in St. Peter's Square?
Yes.
Taken from Egypt by the Romans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the Joel Kramer is wandering around the Pergamon Museum and says, this is great. Anyone can come here and look at that stuff.
Oh, anyone, huh?
In theory, that's true. But you know what? The Pergamon Museum was built for Germans to go and look at this stuff. And it was built around these giant, magnificent objects that belong to these other people who cannot go and look at their own shit.
Yeah, by and large, no, they cannot.
And while museums are doing the laudable thing in repatriating a lot of these artifacts, that's never going to happen at the Pergamon Museum. No one's tearing down, because that's what it would take. You would have to basically demolish the museum in order to get this stuff back. to the people
Hey,
who it belongs
Welt
to.
Museum.
It is a permanent sin that will never be what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know. It's never going to be reversed. It's never gonna be
atoned for.
fixed.
There's no reversal for some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Permanent damage.
Yeah, speaking of that, hey, that museum in Vienna, give Mexico Moctezuma's headdress back. I'm not asking nicely.
Hmm.
They're
You
like,
would-
it's too delicate to travel. It wasn't too delicate to steal.
You're going to storm the gates on your giraffe mount, right?
No, that's for the Vatican.
Oh, okay, the giraffes were reserved
say-
for the Vatican?
Yes, those are the kosher war beasts. By the way, I love what Jillian notes in the chat is that, yeah, Eric Killmonger does take some artifacts that aren't Wakandan just because he likes it, because that's an early hint that he's not supposed to be the good guy, that he goes too far. Like, he starts out being completely justified, but he goes too far. Like,
That is basically his entire character, is like, hey,
Yeah.
he's making a lot of great points. Oh, yeah, but then he went too far.
Yeah.
yep.
Yep. Which is actually a pretty common theme throughout history, is like, oh, hey, look,
Yeah.
these guys made lots of really cool points. Oh, no.
Oh, wait, genocide. No, wait, stop.
Yeah.
Eric being like, hey, we're like super advanced and we're not using it to help people, especially those of us who have been brutally oppressed for centuries. I agree. Yeah, I'm going to take the war dogs and just go terrorize other people on the planet. No!
Right?
No, Eric! Stop! Jonico, stop!
Yeah.
Come
Yeah.
on, bro.
I'm going to hit play again.
To it because I wanted to. So I have my little mugshot of me giddy like a schoolboy, just like, look, it's the black obelisk and I'm here looking at it. And
History
I'm pointing
is cool.
Yes, it is. I am not going to criticize Brian Thomas for being excited about this. That is perfectly understandable, and I would probably have a similar reaction. So, no shade, no criticism on this part, because you know what? It is really cool, and he's right about that. So, you know what? Actually, we'll take a drink for Brian Thomas being right about this.
He did
It
his
is
something
really
right.
cool.
I had that same kind of reaction when I saw the Magna Carta.
Yeah.
I was like, holy crap, there it is!
And the Magna Carta isn't in some, like, museum in Zaire or
country.
something. Yeah, after having been stolen by invaders. That's cool. That's nice. Nice
Yeah,
for all
it's actually
the
still
British
in
people.
England.
Yeah, it's nice for all the English people who actually get to look at that part of their history.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know what?
I also,
Kip,
I was in,
you made a
where
big
was
mistake
I?
during the War of 1812 in that Canada didn't take the original Constitution of the United States with them back to Canada. So, idiots.
Oh my god. You know what's funny is I was in, I believe it was Boston last year, and I was going through some artifacts. Like there was, for whatever reason, Harvard had a museum, a section of its museum on campus dedicated to like the New World, and I was like, okay, great. So we're going through, and they have a section about like the indigenous Mashiach. And there's I don't think it was the actual like stone pillar, but they had a reproduction of one of the stone pillars carved in with all the iconography. And I specifically went and pointed out the fact that the eagle on the cactus did not have a snake in its mouth. Originally, that was not part of the legend. And over time, the whole idea of a snake being in the eagle's beak has accreted to that legend. But if you go back and look at the earliest iconography and writings about it, the eagle landing on the cactus in the middle of Lake Texcoco or whatever didn't have a snake. So I pointed that out. I was like, see? Look, this wasn't part of the original narrative. Like,
It was originally a much hungrier eagle.
oh.
Jay, who, you know,
That's so neat.
it was
wow.
really neat.
So it's at the British Museum? you
Yeah,
said?
British Museum.
Okay. Wow, that's really
Right.
cool.
Sean.
A couple more really quick. There's one that's it's the oldest Yahweh inscription, the Soleb inscription in Egypt. It talks about it. It says in hieroglyphics Yahweh.
Wow.
I would love to
Does
know
it, though?
where, because all I can see, the only hieroglyphics I can see on this are the parts in the cartouches, which, hey, spoiler.
Personal names.
Yes, the only thing that goes in the cartouche is the personal name of a pharaoh, specifically. Not just anyone. It's specifically a royal personal name. In fact, it's actually only a subset of the royal names that go in the cartouches, because every pharaoh had a whole long list of royal names, and only some of them went in those. Which, like, Nothing that I'm seeing in the cartouche could reasonably be Yahweh that I can see. Although I can only really clearly see on the left. Because, yeah, on the right. This is why line drawings of artifacts are important, because often photographs are low contrast. So,
And it dates to right after Moses.
no, it doesn't.
What?
Oh,
No, it doesn't. That's like saying it dates to right after Iron Man had his arc reactor installed in his Mark I Iron Man suit. It doesn't mean anything. I'm going to take a drink for this dates to right after Moses. Okay. It dates to right after you think Moses was around. That's not the same thing.
Yeah, that's not the same.
so I'm thinking he's probably like an old Exodus guy, isn't he?
I don't know, because I don't know exactly when that obelisk, or not obelisk, but that pillar was made. So here's what we're going to do. We're actually going to start wrapping things up. I've written down where we are stopping. We did actually not quite make it to 3 minutes this time. We're a little bit under, but that's okay. We had a lot of fun tangents. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up next time, probably backing up to the beginning of talking about this pillar, because, you know, it's a whole brand new topic and I want to have the full context for it. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up and we're going to give Kip an entire 60 seconds to tell us what's coming up, and then I'm going to mute him. And then I'm going to talk about what's coming up, and then I'm going to ask Vishanti the same. And then...
Actually, you know what? Let's stack the deck in Kip's favor. How about I go first?
Okay.
And then potentially Dapper goes second, so that Kip has enough time mentally to organize his thoughts so that he can get everything he needs to within that 60 seconds.
All right. You have 60 seconds too, Vish. Go.
Tell me. All right. So, now that Chrissy Hansen has finished her master's degree, hooray! She and I are going to be working on a series talking about the different tropes of anti-Semitism. We're going to hopefully start with blood libel. We have amassed a pretty sizable folder of resources, papers, books, and things like that on the topic. And also this week, I completed an interview with Rabbi Hannah, who, if you are on TikTok, she's known as That Rebel Rabbi. She has started a series of interviews. I can't remember the full title of it, but the first episode already dropped. It's got Dan McClellan in it. She's going to interview me. She's got Josh on the docket, I think. So she's going to be releasing that series. So you can have that to look forward to. I yield my time.
Awesome. So I will start. I will also have 60 seconds. All right. So on Tuesday, we're doing Matt with Maddie. Oh, wait. I forgot to lab it. Stop. Anyway. Tuesday, we're doing Matt with Maddie.
Does this count?
No, we're doing Matt with Maddie on Tuesday. Then on Thursday, we're doing a premiere. It is going to be the premiere of a next series. I don't remember which one it is because I haven't scheduled it. So just show up. I don't know. It's going to be at noon. Then over on Friday, over on Top Hats Off, Maddie is going to be running her new one-page RPG that she wrote herself called Scots and Cats. The premise is all the cats in the world have invaded Scotland. You play as a group of Scots living in a Scottish village, and you and your village have to collectively kill off something like 114 cats each in order to successfully defend Scotland from the cat invasion. Then on Saturday, we're going to be back here talking about that pillar from Egypt that allegedly says something about Yahweh. And then, yeah, that's what's coming up in the next week or so. Kip, you have 60 seconds. Go.
Okay, so I will oh yes, this next week I will be doing a stream. I thought it was probably a good idea to provide some sort of formal response to some of the things that Richard Carrier has claimed about the peer review process and the problems with his own ideas. So we're going to be doing that. I put it off because I wanted a little bit of time to get some stuff together for it. I recorded for the very good podcast, The New Evangelicals, this last week, and I believe that'll probably be coming out this next week or in the near future for sure. I'll be doing my bit with Rabbi Hannah on Wednesday, so that's coming out as well. And then next weekend, after my appearance on this show.
All right, that is 60 seconds. We didn't get to talk about budget scripture Saturday. Sorry about that. No, they didn't because you're all still muted. Bye, everybody. Furthermore, ICE must be abolished. we're getting out of here. Also, come hang out on the Discord. We're doing Mothra versus Godzilla, the one from 1964,
Budget
not the one
Scripture
from
Saturday.
1992. So come hang out for that. Vishanti might even be there, but probably not because she's never there. Bye! Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovand, Tapioca Weasel, Arrow Dodger, Dan Sheedy, Eleron Teller, Phil Rivara, Ian Chen, Joshua Geese, Kelvin Brostic Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Regios, Sphincter of Doom, The Plastic Mouse, Volis, North Texas Fossils, and John Ackerman. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.